It is 7 o'clock. I am going to call this meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second. Mr. Mayor?
If the council so wishes, I'd like to add and just have it lead off the meeting, a report from the city engineer related to some issues that we had at the water plant and our distribution system yesterday that I know, or I believe are top of mind for the council and residents. So if we could lead off the agenda with that tonight.
Super. So why don't we put 3.5 on the agenda? And that can be the city engineer's update. So
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of item 3.5, the city engineer's update.
I'll second. Okay, we've got a motion by Councilmember Henry and a second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Item 3.5, Mr. Lannis.
Well, good evening,
Good evening.
Mayor and Council here. We are going to talk to you about a couple of different things. One of which was some of the concerns from, well, yesterday. It was quite a day. A lot of people looking at a lot of issues and doing a lot of troubleshooting. And then we've also got a standing item, some pressure concerns that have caused water heaters to pop. And so they have to be looked at two separate ways here. We've got yesterday. I'm going to start ultimately with that. That one ultimately caused a lot of thought and troubleshooting to happen in a hurry. And so what we had going on there is we had some concerns about the elevation and your north tower dropping, and we were overtopping the middle tower. And so ultimately, it came down to the fact that we weren't getting to the point where we were running out of water. It was the fact that it wasn't behaving as we were expecting it to, and so there was some issues that, quite frankly, just required immediate attention by a lot of folks to say why is this tower dropping here and this one overtopping here. So ultimately, a large team came together on that one to start looking at things, and in the process here, we were ultimately troubleshooting everything. It was operational items. So this valve open, this valve closed. Why is it doing this? We were testing different things. We were testing the PRVs, which are pressure reducing valves between the two zones. So just to put some perspective here, you've got 3 different pressure zones, 2 different towers, PRVs between each of the zones that drop the pressure from one zone to the next, and you have all of these things have to be working properly in order for the system to do what it's expected when you're throwing pumps on. Everything's got to be synced up, and it has to be functioning. One valve is leaking, you've got a problem that will show itself in another way, and so all of these things were happening during a very high supply time, which is, one of the things, if you go back 2 years ago, which is why we were driving pretty hard to try and make sure that we had an operational plant this year, because not only do you have high supply right now, or a high demand right now with 5,800 people, but you also have, obviously terribly dry conditions at a time where we're trying to test this plant. And, if we could have had 2 months ago in our schedule, we would have greatly appreciated that, but it all got thrown into a very high demand time to be doing some checks on these things. And so what ultimately was the issue is we've got a couple of things that we're double checking as far as what caused some of the imbalances that we saw yesterday. There's one common theme is that we had a failure of one of your PRVs, which is a pressure reducing valve that we exposed during the testing. That was the core trigger that ultimately sent things back in the right direction, is finding that failure in your system. At the same time, we were doing some other things with the plant, which has to do with the valving and some other pump operational items that were being checked. But all in, well, our biggest goal was to fix the issue. I mean, we had to get this thing back to the point of balance. And so there were so many different things that were being tested, verified, that we still are going to be going through some step-by-step. What did we do? How did it react? What did we do? How did it react? All mixed with a lot of demand that was occurring at the time. And so we did get to the point where we had a failure in the system that we now have isolated. And we now are at a point where the system is operating exactly as we would expect it to. Well, I shouldn't say exactly as we expect it to, but it's operating in a healthy balance as we would need it to control the elevations in both the towers during high demand periods. So we have a functional operational facility that we can operate and handle a lot of the demand balances. We've got some issues that we are continuing to look at as far as how this is operating. That is going to be continued testing and verification. We're thinking that there could possibly be an exposed leak between the high zone and the middle zone that's causing some higher pressures in the middle zone that is being really exposed with the demand and the new plant and the pumping that's going on. You've got existing issues that are, quite frankly, very sensitive. There's one neighborhood, quite frankly, that has been an issue for years that we might actually have to go back and look at whether or not those independent homes need pressure valves. The pressures have just historically been too high to handle pressure fluctuations that are happening during a plant startup or plant change like this. And so that might not have anything to do with the plant right now. We've just got a system issue that we might just have to fix moving forward. We might have to put in pressure valves in a bunch of homes that we're seeing. They've just been riding a little bit too high. And so we've got a couple of system drawings that going back to decades ago that we're also seeing we absolutely have to have good, accurate records. When things like this happen, when we turn a valve, we need to know exactly where it's going to go. There are certain things that were not as they were supposed to be as far as valving and such, and we absolutely have to get that valving accurately updated with this process. And so we're looking at all things, and we're trying to bring all of your records to a point where we know exactly what each element is doing, where all valves are pointed. And at this point, we have a good stable system, but we do have some pressure issues that we're going to continue to troubleshoot moving forward, and that's the other side of this. You do have a couple of neighborhoods that we have to take on the high pressure that they've historically had, and we might have to try and address that through some other recommendations. And then go ahead.
So what I'm hearing is that the system is operating as it's designed to. It's back up to where it's operating to where it was designed, correct?
Yes, it's a stable system to handle your supply.
Okay.
With some issues that we're going to continue testing.
That's the pressure.
That's the pressure.
How many neighborhoods? You said two?
Yeah, the Highland area is one for sure, and then there's another. Some of the homes in a couple in the middle zone are high pressure as well.
Ballpark, how many residences will be affected by that?
Well, the Highland Park area is ballpark. River Bluffs.
Yep.
Yeah, I would. I don't want to get you off on this one. I mean, maybe we're talking dozens of homes that we're talking about, but at the same token here, that it's being looked at as a whole, the whole middle zone.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, sure.
Just to add on to that, Councilmember Henry, so one of the things, if you hear of somebody who's struggling with this or have had some type of unique experience with their water heater in the last week or even month or a couple of months, we're asking folks to call City Hall. So we have about, I think this afternoon I got an update, we're probably right around only a dozen reported, but I think people are talking about it with neighbors. And so as we're having these conversations, we're asking folks, some of these won't be city issues, but if it's this pressure release valve on the water heater, we need to know that you had that situation and we want to work with you to remedy it. and understand how this is impacting our system.
Okay,
Have we had any reports of it coming from the Bluffs? Because I believe I just heard of one or two from the Bluffs neighborhood on the Carver Creek Circle. I think it was the lower.
Yeah.
Have you had those reported, officially reported?
I'd have to look at our log. What we've asking people to do is they go into Diane at Public Works. We ask for address, time that occurred, and what exactly did occur. We know, generally speaking, it's a water heater. But yeah, I mean, I would have to look at the records, but there's spots of homes
Okay.
in some of these neighborhoods where Highland is consistent.
Okay,
So it tends to vary a little bit by pressure zone.
okay, okay. And then, just a sideline to that for anyone, we have a few people on, but posting it on Facebook doesn't get it reported. It has to come through the proper city channels. So if it's happening, call the city. That's what they're there for, to take that information down, to get working on it. So because I know I've seen some chatter on Facebook about it, but it doesn't get solved on Facebook. It has to get solved through calling down to City Hall. So.
No, and we appreciate that, and it's not like we're trying to dodge the issue. That right now, that we need logs. We need to log the homes, the circumstances. People need to get their things taken care of, and then they're getting logged, and then we're going to have some unified responses as far as how to deal with things. Some of, like I said, some of the homes we may be looking at pressure valves. Some of them might be just something where we replaced the valve for the water heater, and it was a one-time occurrence. So, we want to make sure that we're answering the right way, but every one that has come in is an important issue that we're going to make sure has got a proper response. Then that's what our reply has been, is that just give us a little bit of time, log it, give us your invoices and what your issues were. So, and that's what we'd continue to request. Anything that you hear, send it into Public Works. So what ultimately we would probably close this out with this is, you had a few we'll say challenges that were tough to work through in a very short amount of time, as far as maybe some records that need to be updated when we're trying to adjust things in a hurry and troubleshoot things. You've also got the realities that we knew supply was going to be, or demand was going to be pretty heavy this summer, and we're hitting it, and it's a tough thing to do some on the fly adjustments as the plant's being operated for some of these or for some of these major changes. And then ultimately we've got a few system weaknesses that we might have to continue talking about as we move forward, which is, again, a neighborhood that's sitting at the upper end of pressure that can't handle a small adjustment without these valves blowing. That's something that we would need to fix long term. I mean, Chad's had a situation where they crack a hydrant and a PRV blows, and that shouldn't happen in the system. And so we're going to probably try and take that on as well. But the short of it is I know this is, none of you are sitting here saying, well, this is all expected. And I get that. It's why is this happening? Why are we dealing with any of these things? I will simply say, we have a stable system, and not everything goes perfectly when you're going through construction. Demand hits in a hurry, and the main thing is we were able to jump on it, get it all back to stable, and it's going to be stable at this point moving forward. And we're going to continue troubleshooting the pressure. We're going to continue troubleshooting whether or not we got a leak in the high zone to the low or the mid, which is certainly a concern we want to deal with. We might have to open up a gate valve and find out if we've got some leaking going on. And then lastly, you have mechanical failures, and that's just one of the things that it's a perfect storm when you have a mechanical failure amid other things. And we had a mechanical failure with the PRV that ultimately explains why these systems are so redundant. We have a lot of redundancy built in, and this was one of those things where it unfortunately exposed itself at a time where it's tough to adjust to.
do we need to replace that valve?
Yeah, if a PRV fails, it's going to have to get replaced, and so how it gets, whether it's repairable or replaced, I can't get any answer on that just yet. So.
Okay.
I think Vivian.
Yeah, so thanks for all of this explanation. I know when things like this happen as a community, it's annoying, and it is, to say this, it's annoying and it's inconvenient. But I do want to say thank you to all of our city staff and everyone who was there spending their Father's Day at a water treatment plant and a water tower, making sure that we were getting back online. I know there was a lot of people out there yesterday, so I appreciate that. While it was an inconvenience, it was a short inconvenience if you really think about it, and most of us were able to survive through that. So again, I hope that we can find out where these problems are soon, so we don't have this, because summer's here, right? So it's not,
They'll
and
have
the way it's
water.
looking right now, it's not going to get a lot cooler anytime soon. But again, thanks to all the staff, and thanks for working really hard behind the scenes. I know people don't see that, but we know you're there, and we know that you're working fast and furious to try and fix it, so thank you.
What I hear you saying with that we have a stable water system, I don't hear you saying that the watering ban needs to be extended. Is that correct?
Yeah, at this point here, Seth is on the Zoom call. Seth is one of the people that I called at 12 o'clock and said, all right, I'm coming. And so Seth spent 8 hours yesterday out there, and was a big part of resolving it. But Seth, as far as you're concerned, I think we have a stable system to supply water for the summer. I mean, we're not worried about next 2 days where we feel we're stable. But we have other things that we're concerned about that we want to continue to get in balance. But Seth, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, Dan, I agree. I mean, system is stable right now. We're able to keep water up in the north end tower. And so right now I see no reason to continue on with the watering ban. The system is operating as we want it to at this point. Dan highlighted there's some items we're working on trying to fix and keep working through those. But water's in the tower is where we want them to be, and at the elevations where we want it to be, so it's operating well.
Right. Did the watering ban help? Were you able to see a reduction in water usage yesterday?
I'll let Chad take that one as far
Okay.
as the demand.
Yes, so the water ban did help. It allowed us to catch up during, the event that happened.
Super, thank you. Is the water treatment plant isn't fully online yet, is it? The new addition?
Not everything. We've got 2 filters that we're looking to get online. It's at a transition phase where we're right just around the corner to getting the filters on. We just got the 2 more wells that were tied to DNR, some DNR testing for well number 5. So little things are coming together to the point where we'd say, yes, we're fully where we want to be. But again, we got a crash course in making sure everything was doing what it needed to be doing.
So that's my next question. We always expect the unexpected, right? But do we need to steady ourselves? Is there potential for another hiccup before we become fully online?
I would say at this point, from a supply perspective, we don't have concerns. What we needed was enough water to be going where it needs to go, and we've got that balance that we can control the towers as we'd like them to be controlled. That being said, the pressure is an issue that we need to take on. I mean, that's the degree that we're not going to stop on that until we figure out what we have going on. We've got some higher pressures in the middle zone than we should, and the only way that can be happening when we have our pressure reducing valves working is if there's a gate valve that's not closing and it's pushing its way through the system. So we have to continue on those things, but you've got supply and you got pressure. We're not gonna. Well, I can't say never, but
Don't say never.
we're not going to be worrying about the supply issue at this point with our 2 towers being balanced.
Okay.
We have the water, we've got the wells. We can do what we need to do. We would have again liked to be 2 months earlier when we were having to troubleshoot some of these things versus the highest demand time that you could be looking at. But no, I think we're past the supply side of things.
Okay.
and balancing the needs for operating under absolute peak conditions. We've got a little bit of work to do and making sure each valve is doing what it's supposed to be doing as far as where that water goes. We're going to be doing a few updates to your records, and then there's a few other things that we're going to continue working on as far as whether or not you've got another mechanical issue going on as far as a valve or something of that nature. But
Okay, so just breaking it down, if somebody pulls me aside at Casey's, what happened was we didn't have enough water in one of the water towers.
yeah, was
And it
leaking,
was-
leaking down into the low tower,
We
yeah.
couldn't get it in there, and yeah, it was leaking down and overflowing the second, well, the first tower, as it were, at the water treatment plant. We were
Yeah.
struggling with how to get water into the second
Yes.
tower.
Yeah.
And because that was so low, that put us at a threshold where we had to institute a watering ban, a non-essential water ban.
Yeah, and you had a mechanical failure, which is fairly important to the discussion. We all of this during a very high peak period
Yep.
of watering. You had a mechanical failure coupled with, you know, a plant that is being constructed because and expanded because of the demands that you're seeing. And so, you know, all those things coupled together, yes.
Okay, and we're not 100% sure what the cause was at this point, but you are gonna continue to figure it out, and we'll have a report at a future date.
We know what one of the causes was, but we're not happy with one of the contributing factors.
Okay.
And we want to know everything. But we had, obviously, we had about 12 hours of things that were being tested, done, valves that were being adjusted, exercised, verified they were closed. There's so many things that were going on. We've got to look back at all the activities that happened during that day. We know the PRV failed, and that certainly was a contributor to some of the instabilities. We want to know the second and third parts of this and what's going on with the pressure. And when we got each of those 100% resolved, we'll be happy. But we have a stable system, which was the number one issue, which got everybody to come and say, all right, we got to get this fixed today.
Okay. And Chad, there's a component of the, what is it, the SCADA system?
SCADA, yes.
That let us know that we were losing water in a tower so that this didn't get worse than it potentially could have been had we come in to work on Monday morning? And
Yeah.
that's why we're making investments in these kinds of things?
Yes, staff got an alarm at 4:30, I believe, Sunday morning.
Okay.
And most of us were here until 7 p.m.
Okay. Let's see. So just switching topics on the pressure reducing valve and the folks who are seeing valves,
Yes.
having issues with valves on their water heaters.
Yeah.
I know that you guys are working that. The urgency is right up there
Yeah.
because the folks that I'm hearing from have water that they can't stop in their
Can't
homes.
stop.
So that's what I'm hearing from folks, is that they're having issues. I know that you guys are dealing with it. I know that they're calling City Hall, and that's where I'm directing them to call. But I just think it's, again, like really important if we hear folks reaching out to try to funnel them in through that pipeline, pun not intended.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate, if you're hearing it, Public Works immediately, we'll go out there that day and take a
Okay.
look at what they're dealing with. And we don't want their water to be running for 2 weeks and say, well, what am I supposed to do? I mean, we'll send somebody out there.
Okay.
But they do have to call Public Works so we can organize a response.
Great. Okay, that's it for my questions. Again, I echo Christy's sentiments. You guys had a long day. Brent, Dan, Chad, your teams, your people, Seth. I'm fairly certain that the vast majority, if not the group, was exclusively made up of fathers, and it was Father's Day. So some folks missed their first Father's Day. So I appreciate your care and the time that you're putting into this. Thank you. I wish we weren't in this position, but I know that it's not your fault, and I appreciate everybody's hard work, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to, we good to move on, you guys? All right.
Yes.
Moving on to community comment. Community comment is an opportunity for residents and other stakeholders to share issues or concerns not listed on the agenda with the city. Individuals must limit their comments to 3 minutes. Individuals should not expect the mayor or council to immediately respond to their comments. The city manager, if appropriate, will follow up directly with the presenter and/or respond to those questions raised during the community comment at the next meeting. So if you guys have anything to comment on, please come up. We'll have a timer going, and I think you guys remember the drill. We just like for you guys to introduce yourself, please, with your name and your address.
All right, my name is Brad Carver. I live at 1900 Green Ash Drive in Carver. First and foremost, thank you for having me. Just kind of a few things. So I'd like to kindly ask for your consideration in the reduction of our residential speed limits within the city of Carver. Just talking about a couple of reasons why. So while it is understood that the city engineers have designed the streets with a speed limit of 30 in mind, we feel that real-world scenarios should play a more substantial part in the speed limit considerations. Some of those things would be the concentration of kids, families, animals, parked cars, and the layout, quote-unquote, curvatures of the city streets. While the police report conducted within the development of the Spring Creek shows an average speed which appears to be less than 30, which is the speed limit currently, I also feel that this is a sign that people on average do not feel comfortable driving even if the speed limit of 30. However, with the current laws, not only can we not issue citation at 30, a officer comment that I spoke to while patrolling said, you know, for us to issue any citation, the car not only needs to hit 35, but also exceed it. The officer's comment was also, you know, cars come whip around the corner, but they are still within the legal speed limits. This tells me a revision should be strongly considered. It has also been proven in other cities and developments that bringing down a posting reduced speed dramatically has shown to dramatically reduce the average speed of the vehicles. It's more than just a reduction, but this is also works well with raising the general awareness within the city and communities. Just a couple quick statistics. Goes without saying, but the odds of being seriously injured or dying are dramatically increased, even with small increases in speed. This study was conducted by Minneapolis as a part of their reduction in speed consideration. 20 miles an hour, chance of injury is 13%. 30 increases it to 40%. As we approach that 35 to 40, brings it up to a scary 73%. And I have conducted, as most of you have probably seen, a poll on the Carver Life page. As of 5 p.m. today, we had a total of 279 votes, 74% asking for the reduction. We are not the first to consider or instate a new rule around this. Minneapolis has instated it. St. Paul, St. Louis Park is currently in process. Victoria, which I had the opportunity to speak to Derek Gunnarsson about, he was part of the reduction in the city streets from the 30 to 25. He said he had a bit of kickback, pushback from the city engineers, but after further looking, they agreed that while the streets may be designed for a certain speed, you know, you have to take into account the concentration of families. He said this overall community feels much happier about the change, and the speed has shown a noticeable reduction. Edina has also passed, and I did have the opportunity to speak to Kevin Staunton. He said, once again, the engineers gave him pushback, but they found that it did make a dramatic impact. He was actually one of them that went to tried to get the state statute changed and was successful to allow individual cities to make the changes. That was in Edina. You know, some questions I have, I do kind of want to loop some police questions in, but, you know, part of a reduced speed is also about enforcement. So, you know, if you could elaborate a little bit on what the contract from the sheriff's office looks like in regards to police coverage specific to Carver, that would be helpful. It is my understanding that we have no assigned police coverage assigned specifically to Carver from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. daily, as shown on the reports from the Meadows. This also shows that it is a very busy time and probably the busiest traffic time of the day. So do we have appropriate coverage for this time, and do we plan to increase patrol in the near future as Carver continues to grow, and it's one of the fastest growing cities in the state? This was just kind of a tidbit, but in review of a city council meeting in Victoria on December 13th of 21, they did make mentions of concerns assuring that deputies are patrolling within their city limits, as they are essentially the ones paying for the coverage. The question I had is, do we allow our patrol to leave the city without you know, there being a significant emergency? Who typically covers Carver if there's no police presence? And are there any contractual agreements stating that they are required to at least patrol or supervise our area during times where we don't have any coverage? I also did have a little bit of a side question, but you know, Spring Creek is also an engineered street that was an old, you know, the old 212. So by an engineering perspective, people are driving what they feel is comfortable as it's designed, and you know, it used to be I believe 55 mile an hour road, which the sign is still in the ditch. It fell over, but and then also the corner of Mount Hope Road. Neighbor asked me to ask if there's anything we could do about that blind intersection between Spring Creek and Mount Hope. You have to get about halfway out before you can see the car coming up. Otherwise, that's about all I've got, but I hope you please join me in supporting the initiative. As I say, all in favor, raise your right foot.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Hello,
Hey.
I'm Jenna Hunt. I'm at 1891 Greenish Drive. Thank you for your time this evening. I'm seeking the city's commitment to research the impact of lowering the speed limit on residential streets from 30 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour in Carver. I also ask that this request be implemented. I witness people traveling well over the 30 mile per hour speed limit in my neighborhood on a very frequent basis. I'm highly concerned about the safety of myself, my family, other people's family, children, and pets in our community. I'd also request the city provide details on the plan for increased patrol, resources, and keeping the public accountable as our community is noted as one of the fastest growing in Minnesota the past couple years. Carver is not a tiny town anymore. More people equals much greater risks. Question, how does the city evaluate the staffing needs for police patrol in our city? The current staffing levels seem quite low based on my research. In a recent public poll, the sample indicated that 70% of people in Carver would vote yes to reducing the speed in Carver. Question, has the city seen this public poll and is it adequate? If not, how can the city help administer a poll that would be used? This is a little bit out of order. I wrote this. This is just a note that seeing pedestrians being transported to metro hospitals via life flight helicopters because they've been hit by a vehicle is not fun, and it happens. Just last week, I watched a helicopter leave St. Francis Hospital in Shakopee with a pedestrian who was struck by a vehicle while I was waiting in the ER with a family member. This was unrelated. While we may not have historically had many incidents, the goal in my request is to keep it that way. Many cities in Minnesota and across the nation have widely studied the critical 10, that is the reduction of speed limits in residential neighborhoods from 30 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour. Many cities have also, in fact, reduced their speed limits in these residential neighborhoods, Edina, Victoria, Minneapolis, Rochester, and St. Paul, to name a few. Slower vehicle speeds and increased patrol to enforce accountability will foster a safer and more pleasant pedestrian and cycling environment for residents, students, and visitors. I ask that your team please evaluate my request to enhance the safety, access, convenience, and comfort of all users of all ages and abilities, including pedestrians, people with disabilities or requiring mobility aids, bicyclists, motorists, recognizing that all streets are different and that the needs of various users will need to be balanced in a flexible manner. A reduction in speed in residential neighborhoods will inevitably reduce risk for traffic deaths and severe injuries, support and enhance the quality of life, and maintain increased neighborhood vitality and livability, improve safety and comfort for people of all abilities, support the safe movement of people and goods. In May 2019, Governor Tim Walz signed into law a bill passed by the Minnesota State Legislature granting cities the authority to set speed limits on streets under their own jurisdiction. This went into effect in August of 2019. The full language of this statute is in Minnesota Statute Section 169.145H, speed limits on city streets. In conclusion, my last questions are, will the city research this important topic that 74% of an optimal sample survey indicated as an important issue in our community? Question, if yes, can you please provide the timeline when that would be available? I understand this will take some time to review. Question, if not, why wouldn't the city want to reduce speeds in our rapidly growing community to keep it more safe like other surrounding cities have done? Thanks again for your time and consideration.
Thanks, John. Yep. Anybody else? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, caller. Same rules if you don't mind. If you could introduce yourself with your name and your address, please.
Okay, my name is Tina Schmoller. I'm at 1896 Spring Creek Drive in the Meadowbed Spring Creek subdivision. And I do not have any research and facts and figures, but what I do have is my practical experience since I moved in on Spring Creek Drive here in Carver. We were the first people to move in on this block, and we have no children, so we didn't really experience a lot of what everybody else is experiencing. But what I did notice when we moved in is that this road going in front of our house, Spring Creek Drive, seemed to be, I guess, a thoroughfare for people who wanted to drag race or really get quickly from one place to another. In fact, I see a 55 mile per hour speed limit sign in the ditch that has been in there across the street from my house since we moved in 2019. And I think people were used to going that speed. So I did call the city at one point, and they were kind enough to work, because as this street began to develop, every family moving in had small children with them, and they were really concerned, because even though the parents were always out there with the kids, you know, a ball can run into the street or whatever, and people were really zipping down this road. And so they did come out, and on either end of the block, they put up a speed limit sign of, what was it, Craig? 30 miles per hour on the street. But they said, and they were correct, that without law enforcement, it's just as good as nothing, because nobody is going to change their driving habits based on that sign if nobody's getting a ticket for it and nobody's, you know, being reprimanded for it. And so now this neighborhood has just grown so fast. There are kids everywhere now, and animals everywhere. And though we haven't had a horrible incident yet, I mean, I just can't imagine how horrible it would be to have a little kid hit by a car, and at the speeds people are going, that would certainly be deadly. So I feel like there's not enough reaction time if people don't reduce their speed. Just enough just to get, you know, out of the area where there are houses at least, so that they would be able to react if somebody did run out in front of them as they were going by. So that's just my take on it. Like I said, I don't have research and facts and figures, although all I have is my experience since I've been in this neighborhood. And I think more it's just people have to get used to this not being an empty road anymore in front of farm fields. And that may take some time, but it would be wonderful if they could somehow lower the speed limit so people would at least try. So that's all I have to say on that. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Tina. I appreciate your participation. All right, that last call for comments. Still no? All right, thank you. We will move on to item 5, presentation and reports. Do we have the fire department?
The fire chief is under the weather, so we're
Okay.
gonna postpone him to a future meeting.
Okay. Here's hoping the Chief Triple feels better soon. Item 5.2, the Sheriff's Office report. Deputy Sandberg, welcome.
I almost said good morning, but it's 7:30, 7:40.
You're a little out of sorts.
Good evening, yeah. So I have just some stats to go over very briefly, like a 1,000-foot overview of
Perfect.
comparing last first half of the year, January to June, to this year's January to June. Assaults are down mostly by 71%, so that's usually domestic assault. So we don't have any family, not any. We have less family violence. Drugs are down 75%. Frauds are down significantly. My venture on frauds is we have fewer complaints of identity theft in the form of unemployment fraud or unemployment insurance fraud. So where someone takes the identity of Brent and says, oh, I'm unemployed, give me unemployment money. That's not doing it.
It's not a hint, is it?
Not today. And then overall, our Group A crimes are down 32% from this time last year, which are all of our kind of big crimes. Switching over to the non-criminal areas, this is, I think, where our deputies stay most busy. We have 47 calls for a miscellaneous non-criminal, and that's your neighbor disputes where someone's upset that their kids are chasing balls into your neighborhood, or someone's mowing my lawn by a foot or blowing leaves into my lawn.
Anybody wants to mow my lawn? That's fine.
Yeah. And then suspicious activities where there's a car parked down my street that's unfamiliar. That's a very common one, and I don't want to discourage anyone from calling, but these are the types of calls that keep us busy. And then disturbances, which could be I can hear my neighbor shouting next door. I don't know what's going on. So it's where someone feels uncomfortable and they call us to help mediate. And then I'll switch to traffic. Our traffic's up almost 50%. So your Carver deputies are working hard on traffic and keeping people abiding by our traffic laws. If you don't have any questions, do you need a second to look over it? Or
No,
do you want me to
this was great.
continue?
No, if
I
you
have a
want-
few more, yeah.
Yeah, go.
I'll switch now to the Green Ash Directed Patrol that myself and maybe 3 or 4 other deputies helped contribute to. Over about a week and a half, 2 weeks, we had 6 hours of directed patrol. We saw 110 vehicles. We also had a few of our deputies out there in unmarked squads or subdued squads. So it's not the white squad that I drive most often. They're subdued. Speeds ranged from 12 to 26 miles an hour. I would say the majority were between 20 and 25 miles. None of us saw driving conduct. That would be speed, distracted driving, texting while driving, lane violations where they're driving either butting the curb or in the opposite lane of traffic. We didn't see any driving conduct that would warrant a traffic stop or a citation. In addition to Green Ash, we do, all of us, continue directed patrol in various neighborhoods. I know 6th Street is kind of a hot topic. We also are up on Spring Creek. We're in the Bluffs. We're in downtown. We're on 4th Street. We're on County Road 40 or Main Street. So I know myself and the other deputies who care for Carver, or patrol Carver, I should say, do our best to keep at it and keep the town safe. I'm wondering if you guys have heard anything about any other areas that need special attention, or if you have any other areas of concern from our service.
You know, we had some park vandalism, so do you know if our night deputy actually, I mean, do you get out of the vehicle, walk up to the shelters? I mean, is this something that we've been directing them to do in the evenings?
From my understanding, Ross, or Deputy Hines, does. He also checks on cars in parks that are parked after 10 p.m., which I believe is park closing. So he'll go and knock on windows and see what are folks doing in the park, and then I think he does walk around.
Okay.
So.
Could we maybe reiterate that, especially
Absolutely.
as school's out now and it's warm and people can be out later?
Yes.
To have him, check those a little more frequently.
Yeah.
And then with the exception, Riverside Park does have the boat launch, which is open outside of that time.
I sent a reminder email to all Carver County deputies, so even if they're working a random shift for one of us, that they are aware of that. So that reminder went out a few weeks ago.
Okay. When we looked at this I'm looking at your patrol report here for Green Ash Drive.
Yeah.
It looks like you did a nice sampling of different time frames.
Mm-hmm.
And so was this you and Ross, or was this you and an area car and Ross?
Yeah, so there were a few of us. It was myself, Deputy Heinz, Deputy Steve Dasher, he's an area car, Deputy Zadowski, he's an area car, and I think one other person stepped in. And I'm not sure if our badge numbers are on there, but each different badge number indicates a different deputy.
You're 878, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then maybe I missed it. What was the time frame? How many days, weeks did you
Does it have the dates on there? I think it was about 2 weeks.
Okay.
I have that on my end, on a less pretty formula, so I can send that to you. But it was about 2 weeks.
Okay.
And 2 weeks from today, so backwards 2 weeks.
Okay, so it
it's
was
recent.
very, very recent.
Very
okay,
recent,
so
yep.
this was generally after school was out then.
Yes, I
Okay.
believe. Maybe
Part
that
of it.
the very end of
The very
May.
So school was still in for part of it.
School ended, I think, June 9th for
Yeah, there were-
most folks.
There were a few school buses I saw, so it must have been maybe the last week of school and
Okay.
a week after.
Okay.
You're working on other questions?
I may have a couple.
Okay,
but
Glenn, go ahead.
Sorry, move on.
I know one of the common complaints is the 4th Street stop sign.
On Ash
Yes.
or on Reescraft? Is it the one at the very bottom of the hill? By the church or the one up more in the neighborhood?
Down by the church.
Okay, yes. That's another area that I don't want to give away my hiding spot.
Nope. What
But
hiding spot?
it is on my radar, and it's, again.
No pun
there's-
intended?
Yeah. I mean, we could ask everyone, and there's
Yeah.
speed, there's areas of concern, and I do my best.
Yep.
And I'm sure Deputy Hines does too. I don't want to disclude him, but we do our best to kind of split up what time we have in various problem areas. But I am aware of the 4th Street and Ash stop
Got it.
sign.
That's all I got?
I don't think I have anything additional, you know. You heard tonight, we're concerned about speed. When you allowed me to do that ride along, we talked about speed.
Yep.
I think that there are some areas that come to mind, and you're aware of them all: Spring Creek Drive, 4th Street, 6th Street. You know, at the end of the day, even, you know, Carver Bluffs Parkway, we're making some investments in our street infrastructure, which effectively makes them a better race course if that's the way somebody chooses to drive. So I appreciate your work, and I know that through the experience that we had that afternoon of you driving throughout all different parts of town and kind of keeping your eyes peeled. So
I have a couple more now that we can.
Go ahead.
Oh, if you had something in.
I just have one good feel-good story at the end, so we can go through this all day.
You wrote 20 tickets.
So we did hear tonight from one of our people who is online here about Spring Creek being an issue and what was possible. I think that was the old 212 there, wasn't it? I guess.
Yep.
It's been a while, so I don't remember. But I noticed that this was specifically done for Green Ash Drive and not for Spring Creek Drive. Have we done anything of this nature for Spring Creek in that area?
I personally have not.
Okay.
That isn't to say that I don't sit on the side of Spring Creek morning, afternoon, with my radar on.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I can add to that, Councilmember. So I think when Deputy Sandberg was on maternity leave, we had kind of a similar issue as far as like resident feedback, kind of an outpouring of that. And so we did have dedicated patrol on Spring Creek Drive last summer.
Okay.
So just kind of closing the loop on that. You weren't aware of that because you were out of the office at that time.
Okay. So now I know that we border right with Chaska right there. Are both sides of that street belong to us, or is this still that weird one where part of it belongs to?
Yeah, so
us?
the north side, you're right on. The north side of Spring Creek Drive is in the city of Chaska, so, and the south side of the street is in the city of Carver. So there is we actually, Dan and I and I think it was Aaron Smith and I think maybe Chad, we met with the city of Chaska maybe last fall and just talked about various street improvement projects and that we're planning, 5-10 years from now, et cetera. But there is an extra level of, frankly, bureaucracy that comes along with Spring Creek Drive because it's, the things that we'd want to do on Spring Creek Drive would be dependent upon the city of Chaska agreeing to do those same things. But one of the traffic calming measures that we tried to do last year was we painted it's abnormal, but it is a kind of a relatively small bike lane as a means to try to do some traffic calming on there. And we meet on a pretty regular basis in our weekly engineering and planning meetings to talk about traffic calming strategies because I do think there are things that encourage people just by the physical environment to slow down. Curves are one of them, but you obviously can't construct a curve after a street is in, but striping, it's in the public services queue to relocate. We have one digital speed sign in the community. And so that's being planned to be relocated to Spring Creek Drive. It's right now on Ironwood Drive, but with the signal and then the four-way stop now that's on Hackberry and Ironwood, the benefits of having that in its current location are somewhat muted. And so the plan is to install that on the eastbound lane of Spring Creek Drive about, I would say, halfway down that street. So there are a multitude of techniques, but the best way is having the sheriff's office, enforcing and getting a reputation for, don't speed through Carver. And then part of it is, I think just kind of peer pressure. I mean, just anecdotally, when I'm talking to Deputy Sandberg about, these issues, the lion's share of the folks that are pulled over are not folks traveling from Jordan or Chaska through Carver. It's the folks that frankly live in my neighborhood and your neighborhoods that are a little bit late for soccer practice or getting to work, and everybody has that unique special reason. But I think it's a reflection. I have a new driver in my house. It's an opportunity for me to talk to him about every neighborhood he drives through is somebody's neighborhood, and so don't just slow down when you get to Sugar Maple Court
Or
and
Dad
Spring
can see
Creek
you.
Drive, right? And he's got friends in different neighborhoods throughout the community. And I think if we all, this is a little bit, idealistic, but if we all kind of think about that and talk to our neighbors about that, and if we have a neighbor that's going too fast, talk to parents or say, hey, I noticed, Jimmy was going through too fast. But I mean, we can't supply enough deputies to catch everyone speeding. So part of this is kind of our own community doing this. There's some great questions raised tonight. I have, I've written them all down. I think there's some responses that'll help continue the dialogue.
Yeah, I have a few more questions here. So, just looking at Spring Creek then, because it is a different type of road, partially owned by us. So as it comes through from Jonathan Carver, is that considered a collector street the entire way through? Because I would assume that I shouldn't assume, I was assuming it was considered a collector, but then it has more of a residential feel in one piece and then a collector street feel in another.
Which segment again? Can you repeat that?
So when you're coming in off of Jonathan Carver Parkway on Red Oak Ridge and Spring Creek Drive, then you take that left and it curves around through the neighborhood.
Yep.
But then you end up on what was the old 212, which is a good
Okay.
straightaway there.
Yeah.
So is that considered a collector street, the whole length of it? Is it not?
The way I would put that is, it's kind of in this transition mode. Hands down, it was a collector even higher than
Yeah,
that
it was a highway.
years ago, and you have remnants of that left over. So what you have is a former collector, actually a former highway, as far as we would designate it, where you have half of it looks like a highway, half of it looks residential. We would not designate it as a collector now.
Okay.
Because ultimately, we try our best not to put residential homes on our major collectors. So when we have our opportunities to do that, we're going to try and avoid driveways on the future collectors. Every once in a while, that happens. You have Hennepin County highways that have residential homes on them, and so that one I would put in the residential neighborhood, but it's half, quite frankly, highway. And so that's what we were trying to do there with that fix. Is we were trying to make it look on the north side a little bit more residential with the bike lanes, speed limit signs. But that's why we're having this issue, is it sort of feels residential, but it sort of feels like a old highway.
Truly, yes. Okay, that's all I have questions for you.
Right. Tell us your feel-good story.
All right. Well, Chief Trimbo's not here, but just a hats off to his team. It's probably been about a month and a half now, but we had a CPR save just south of Carver, so that's always nice. A guy fainted, or what was dispatched as fainted. 2 firefighters showed up almost back to back. No, he wasn't breathing, no pulse. They pulled him down onto a flat floor, started CPR right away.
Did they do manual or AED or both?
Both. So we were there. They started chest compressions, got the AED set up. I was third in line, started rescue breaths with a manual bag valve mask. The rest of another engine showed up. They brought in the Lucas machine, got that going right away. Ridgeview showed up, hit him with Epi and some other drugs a few times, and shocked him twice in the residence, once in the ambulance in the driveway. Transported to 212, later transported to Abbott. And as far as I knew a week or two ago, it was still a good story. So,
that is like a worthy story.
yeah, a hats off to our teams. So.
Yeah, awesome. Really well done, and kudos for your role that you played in that. We know that might not happen all the time, so thank you.
All right,
Thanks for coming.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Katie.
Stay cool, Katie.
Nice seeing
Good
you
luck.
again.
You too. Thanks.
All right, let's see. We don't have any public hearings tonight. We do have some amendments to the consent agenda. Brent, I'll let you go.
Yeah, if you wanna, I pulled 7:10 off, so if you
7:10.
wanna,
Okay,
yep.
And I can, do you want me to go ahead?
sure.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so, because I was also gonna pull 7:10 off. So, I'll approve the consent agenda with the amendment of removing 7.10 for discussion.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Councilmember Mock and a second by Councilmember Henry. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, item number 710.
Yeah, so this is gonna be a little wonky here, but prior to kind of getting into the description, there's a change that the city attorney and then the attorney for the Lennar and the landowner need to make, so it's on page 1 of 2 of the included resolution. So if you go to, it starts on page 1, now therefore be it resolved. So
Sorry, Brent, give me 1 second here.
Sure.
I have a little, I'm having
We're in a bad
technical,
way if you're
yeah.
asking me for tech support.
Would you like to use mine?
No, I suppose
Operator error?
well, that could possibly be it. Just give
Can
me,
you close out? of
I'm gonna
this
have to
right now?
close out. Give me 1 second, Brent, sorry about the
Sure.
delay. No, I'll just reopen it, it's okay. I'm gonna answer it here. Oh, did we get it? Okay, give me 1 more second here while I get it back pulled up.
I may be old.
I don't, I'm not an Apple user. Nope. Hold on.
What part am I looking for?
Would you?
Do you have your email on there? Can you get it from the email?
Yeah, I get it here.
I'd ask you what you guys did this weekend, but I know you spent all week, or all Sunday.
Okay, I'm back. All right, thank you.
So, starting on page 1, the first and second provisions under now therefore it be resolved, so it starts off track B. Are you following me?
Where are you?
So Brent, you're
With the
going,
memo?
Nope, in the resolution.
Oh,
okay, so you're
Resolution.
going right into the
Th-
technical part, so,
But this is, trust me on this.
okay, I will.
Because this is I'm gonna start with a technical part that gives you the full scope, and
Okay.
then I'll get into the explanation.
Okay, so it's page 9 of the
I just want to
packet.
dispatch with this part, just so we can
Okay.
not have to worry about it.
Okay.
Perfect.
So number 1 and number 2, so in the packet, it starts off track B as contained in the registered land survey. You see that section?
Yep.
Councilmember Henry, can you get down to, are you on resolution 130-22?
Page 9.
On the actual page?
Yes,
2,
you're
1.
on 14.
Oh, so this is the Apple page, not the actual
Sorry,
page.
yeah, of the
Okay,
packet.
all right.
No,
Okay.
therefore be it resolved, is that?
Now
Yep.
we have got.
Yes.
Yep,
track
and
B.
number 1 says track B.
Okay.
Okay, so it's a delete all on number 1 and number 2. Excuse me, a delete all on just number 1, okay? And it's gonna be replaced with track B as contained in the registered land survey may continue to be used for agricultural purposes, provided that all farm vehicles and equipment used for such continued use are provided rights for ingress and egress to tract B exclusively through tract A or other property that does not require access through any established residential development. So that's the amended resolution. Now to kind of get to the highlight of this matter. So Timber Creek is a development west of the elementary school. As you know, phase 1 has started construction. There's a townhome that's under construction. So this action, which was presented to the Planning Commission and recommended for approval, is essentially related to phasing of the development. So this action this minor subdivision allows phase 2 to be constructed, which you're already processing. But essentially what this does is the subdivided part, it allows the underlying property owner, the Song family, to keep farming the other piece. And so the language that we just inserted in there is basically memorializing that they can't access the farm field through Copper Hills or any other residential development. They have to come down through the Timber Creek development project to get access. So whatever implements they might bring through or tractors, et cetera, would have to come through Timber Creek. So it's a phasing and sequencing of the development. There's nothing related to density or land use or all the typical things that you would see with a major subdivision. This is, I would say, exclusively technical and providing the ability for the underlying property owner, the former property owner, to farm the field, which is left. And frankly, that's in our best interest, because when a field isn't developed or farmed, then it usually grows up into weeds or noxious weeds. We actually got a complaint in related to Timber Creek, related to thistles. So this kind of cleans it up, gets the land worked. In almost all likelihood, we're looking at this field probably being farmed for 1, maybe 2 years at the most, and then it'll be taken down in subsequent phases at Timber Creek. So I don't know if that speaks to your questions, Councilmember Mock, but this is the item before you. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, so I have one question in the overview part. It talks about the final plat. So I'm just going to read the sentence, and then I just need a little clarification. So the request will allow development to begin in phase 2, but the remainder of the site will not be final platted until subsequent phasing. So the piece that we're doing here for this minor subdivision has been final platted?
The phase 2 has been final platted.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. So, in phase 2. Okay.
Excuse me, phase 2 will be final platted.
Okay.
What you're doing is you're subdividing, so the final plat will come to the council at an upcoming meeting.
Okay.
So
this is the step to get the final plat on this piece. So the final plat.
You got one big piece, you're separated into 2, one will be farmed, one will be developed. The final plat will come to the council. I think it's either the next meeting or the meeting after. I'd have to look at the calendar.
Okay, that's just what I needed clarification.
Yep.
So thank you.
Anything for you, Glenn?
Nope.
All right. Let's see. I think we need a motion to approve 7.10, which I will make a motion to adopt resolution 130-22, approving a minor subdivision via registered land survey number 132 to facilitate the next phase of the Timber Creek development.
Excuse me, Mayor Johnson,
Yep.
could you make that motion with the amended text that I presented?
You are correct. With the amended text that Mr. Merrick presented. You don't need me to try to remember it. Right.
We have it in the minutes from this by the city clerk.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
And I will second that.
Motion. We have a second by Councilmember Henry, and the motion is from me, Mayor Johnson. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, moving on to item 8.1, the Carver Bluffs Parkway reclamation. Mr. Merrick.
yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is an item that I acknowledge isn't currently in our existing pavement management plan. As far as we typically like to have a nice sequencing, and as you know, we spent quite a bit of time looking at our overall conditions of the streets, had them graded, and put together a plan. And this section of Carver Bluffs Parkway, which runs from Jonathan Carver Parkway to Ramsey Avenue, is scheduled to be reclaimed in 2026. In talking to our Public Services Director, Chad Shell, and I'll kind of scroll down to some of the photos that we took last week, you can see that it's in a pretty big state of disrepair, and this kind of an estimate based on Chad's work on potholes and other patching in the city. We're looking somewhere in the neighborhood about $15,000 to $20,000 to correct this. The concern that we had is that, pothole patching, as you know, is fairly temporary, and so looking at the need, thinking about most likely spending about $60,000 on this road over the next 3 years before we get to a reclaim. And then thinking about this is, you know, essentially the primary access point, ingress and egress for the Carver Bluffs neighborhood. We at least wanted to present an opportunity for the city council to take a slight departure from the pavement management plan to get to a reclamation project in the Carver Bluffs neighborhood. So I'm just gonna bring up my memo here quick. So we contacted the contractor who worked on our Eagle Ridge Mill Overlay and Reclamation project and got a price via a change order. That price came in at $179,050.20. We have a balance in our special capital fund, which is unassigned fund balance of just under $640,000. And so what we're proposing is that as a one-off, we expedite the Carver Bluffs Parkway reclamation from Jonathan Carver Parkway to Ramsey Avenue and get that done. We have been in communication with GMH, which is our contractor from the Eagle Ridge project, that they likely could get this project done by the end of July. And so even though you're investing kind of out of sequence for this, what this enables us to do, we were leaving out, I think 2 or 3 road sections in Carver Bluffs that were gonna have to be pushed to 2027. So by funding this section of roadway in the Carver Bluffs, you'd theoretically be able to get those last remaining roads in the Carver Bluffs neighborhood done in 2026. And then I think what we're gearing up toward, just in preliminary discussions, is the next neighborhood that would be hit in 2027 would be the Spring Creek area, including Spring Creek Drive. So I know that's a lot to kind of take on. We have the pavement management plan, just for some background, resolution, should you choose to proceed, that would transfer the $179,000 and change from the special capital fund into the street maintenance fund, which is our primary source of street maintenance funding. Dan Lannis is also here if there's some technical questions, and Chad related to the street or street maintenance. So with that, happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions?
Yes. When you say it's going to be, reclamation is gonna take place from Jonathan Carver Parkway to Ramsey Avenue, is that the Ramsey Avenue intersection to the northwest of Ramsey Circle, or where it intersects Carver Bluffs Parkway?
It would be the first Ramsey Avenue intersection.
Okay, just south of Ridgecrest?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
That's it? Christie?
Okay, so I was looking at the rating system, Chad, that we had for this road initially, and when I look at the pictures, it looks very similar to what Sixth Street looks like.
Yes.
Sixth Street had a lower rating. Have we seen that this has deteriorated more since this study was done than we had expected, or it looks very similar? So I'm wondering why one got a 1, one had a 2 for a rating.
This one deteriorated really quickly just over the winter with the freeze thaw cycles. So there was some cracking, some alligator longitudinal transverse cracking in there, but just over I think the amount of traffic and then the longer freeze thaw cycle this spring, it just attributed to the degeneration of this road.
Okay. Is that why, and this is for Brent then, so because it was rated a little bit differently than Sixth Street, and just for funding wise, is that why we had, or maybe Chad too, is that why we had pushed it to 2025?
Well, Sixth Street was kind of, I would say, the train that started moving on Sixth Street before we instituted the pavement management plan. So where Sixth Street is in the plan was essentially a product of kind of where we were at in our street maintenance plan at that time. And Dan can probably speak to us better or from a more technical basis, but when you're talking about a rating of 1 or 2, it's a road that needs to be replaced in the short term. I don't know if I'm hitting that on the right tone there, Dan, but if you can expand on that for me.
Sure. I think that's a fair way to put it. One of the things to keep in mind, if you remember from the pavement management discussions, when it got into it has to be reclaimed territory, we put a lot of our money into those mill and overlays as priorities to try and save those from breaking apart and becoming reclaims. 6th Street was a priority largely because it's your gateway to the downtown, and when it gets to that condition, accepting that condition for a long period of time is not really generally publicly acceptable, plus the amount of traffic, it becomes a very top priority to fix it. So the residential areas that are broken apart, sometimes you're better off waiting a year or 2 or even 3 and hitting those mill and overlays first. In this particular case, it degraded so much, and the amount of money that they're going to have to put into repairing this kind of rebalance some of the thinking, where if you do have the money, if you can come up with the funding, certainly we would support going ahead and attacking some of these areas that are breaking apart. But we'll maintain that we're still going to be trying to hit these mill and overlays and make sure that they don't end up like this.
Okay. Online, page 49 packet, there is a number for that one. So 49, so we're talking about the mobilization. So it's at 5%. They're charging us for their mobilization fees. So are they finished up here and we are getting charged an entirely new mobilization fee to start down in the bluffs?
Unfortunately, yes. It is a new mobilization because effectively they've left, the reclaimer has left, and they're charging to come back with a crew that has to come back and mobilize and set up.
Okay. Do you have a question on top of that, Glenn? Go ahead.
Well, mill and overlay has its totally different set of equipment, if I'm not mistaken, than reclamation.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
And then if I read everything correctly, so if we, for the next 3 years till 2025, are just doing patching on that road, we're going to be spending roughly $60,000 in just patching to get us to the point to actually redoing the road?
That is correct. And with patching, it's a temporary fix. I mean, sometimes the snow plows will pull it out. It's still going to be a bumpy surface.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's all the questions I have.
All right. Let's see. I know that Councilmember McKnight submitted some thoughts. Have you guys all had an opportunity to read those?
I have not.
Did not.
So then I'll read them just for the record. She said, regarding the item on the main meeting agenda on the Carver Bluffs Parkway reclamation, I would like to provide the following comments, which you can share with the rest of the council. I fully support adding this section of the road for reclamation now to the 2022 pavement management projects. 1, to avoid the interim maintenance costs, roughly $60,000, and 2, this section of road is really in a bad state, and the main complaint from Carver Bluff residents. It appears that we will benefit from already having a contractor in town to do the Eagle Ridge development to get this additional section done quickly, July, with an explanation point after it. Similar to what we did when Carver Creek Place was undergoing mill or overlay or reclamation, she says, I can't remember. We added a section of Ramsey Avenue at the top of Carver Bluffs Parkway for a reasonable price within the same time frame. She said, I assume that with the 2023 budgeting process, we would reevaluate our 2025 payment management plan to eliminate this section of the Carver Bluffs Parkway and perhaps consider adding Bluff Road in the Carver Bluffs neighborhood. I think Brent already confirmed that answer to that question. The one question she poses is, she says the memo didn't indicate any negative impacts to the special capital fund with a reduction by $179,000. Staff should confirm.
Yeah, I mean, there's no negative impact other than you don't have that money. When it's unassigned, you could make an argument that this is what that fund is there for, is to take advantage of opportunities when it's in the best interest of the community. It's up to the council to decide if this meets that test.
All right. Separate from Joy's comments, I think we should go ahead with this. If looking at these pictures, if they were zoomed in a little bit more, I would have thought that they were pictures of 6th Street. And I've driven through there. It's in really, really rough shape. And a couple of Carver Bluff residents have reached out to me saying, what are we going to do about this? What's going to happen? And until recently, the answer was 2025, which is a couple of years and $60,000 worth of patching, which I can't remember where I was the other day, but I was driving on what was noticeably a really well-patched street, but it was still not smooth and not an ideal road surface. So I think we should go ahead with this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think patching it is a waste of money. I also think patching it is for something that has deteriorated to that point is, I mean, kind of ridiculous, right? It's gonna be, most of the road's gonna be patched and it's gonna fall right back out again. So again, we go back to it's a waste of money. And to me, it looks so similar to Sixth Street, that, again, if I didn't know that it was a different road, I might have thought it was Sixth Street. So I think it's a worthwhile way to spend some of that special capital fund that we have.
So I'd entertain a motion, unless we have more discussion.
I'll make a motion to approve a change order from GMH for $179,050.20 for the Carver Bluffs Parkway Reclamation Project.
I'll second it.
Motion by Councilmember Mock, second by Councilmember Henry. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
I'll also make a motion to adopt Resolution 129-22, transferring $179,050.20 from the Special Capital Fund to the Street Maintenance Fund.
Second it.
A motion by Councilmember Mock and a second by Councilmember Henry. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, thank you. Let's get that street done. On to communications, number 9.1. Mr. Merrick.
It's no commentary, just your monthly reports.
Right. Council updates, Glenn?
Planning Commission had a meeting. We went over the Timber Creek Phase 2, the lot split that we just went over tonight. And the preserved final plat was put on and approved on a 5-0 vote. So, more building, more houses. It's a good thing.
More residents. Great. Richie?
We had an HPC meeting last week. We discussed the changes to our existing ordinance, and that'll be coming through the Planning Commission then, and then eventually City Council. We did have some approvals for the liquor store for changing out some of those windows, or what was formerly known as the liquor store, for changing out some of those windows. Another topic I wanted to bring up is we did have some people here tonight who came to speak about speed limits and residential areas. I would like to have a little bit more information on this. It sounds like some other cities have lowered their speed limits. I am not sure what their criteria was or what was the push, so I'm wondering if we can have staff do a little bit of fact-finding there for us, and take a little bit of a look into the whys, whens, that those speed limits were changed. I think there's been enough interest to, it's worth a discussion by council to take a look at some of those.
All right, thank you. Just for my updates, 2 weeks ago, we talked about, and I shared through Brent, that Star Tribune article that said that federal money for the state of Minnesota may be in jeopardy because the legislature didn't come to an agreement on the bonding bill and tax bill. I have it confirmed through Congressman Emmer's office and Senator Coleman's office that we should be okay, and that our money, that $2.5 million that we got for the levee project, comes kind of from a different pot of money, if you will, and shouldn't be impacted by the stalemate in St. Paul. So that's good news, and I promised I'd follow up with you all on that. We had a community leaders meeting on June 10th. That's the group where we meet with the school districts and then the 4 communities that are in the Eastern Carver County School District. I don't think that there was anything significant coming from there, except that they wrapped up another successful school year. If you've probably heard, but they think that it's the first time ever that for Chanhassen High School, all of their spring sports qualified for state. So that's kind of unique. Regional Council of Mayors was last Monday, June 13th. Last Friday I had both a Carver County Mayors meeting and a Carver County Business Alliance meeting. And then I want to give condolences to Councilmember Sayre on the loss of her mother recently. And again, I just want to say that with the water issues that we had yesterday, I know that a lot of you guys missed your Father's Day and whatever that looks like for you and your families. And my appreciation isn't a substitute, but please know that your work is all really, really appreciated. And hopefully, we're on the way to getting that fixed. So thank you, thank you, thank you. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilmember Henry
I'll second.
and a second by Councilmember Mock. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Good evening.